Hi YouTube. My mic is still cutting off, but I shall be okay. Yes, today we are starting a new book. We are starting at the Mountains of Madness. I don't know what it's about, but it was requested, and it will be interesting to see where it goes. How was your day? Hello, Nola Saint. Don't mind me not overstraining my voice. I will be a little bit quiet today just because my throat is killing me, but I should be okay. Not that bad. It is a bit nostalgic for me because this is the first H.P. Lovecraft work I've read. Really? Oh, okay. Oh. Yes, take it easy. Yeah, I will. My mum hasn't called me today yet, so she might call me sometime in between. So we'll need to mute just to pick up on that. But otherwise, yeah. Okay. The previous two Lovecraft stories have been pretty interesting. And I do hope my mic isn't cutting out randomly again. It has been for a while. I just hope it doesn't affect the reading. Okay, chapter 1. And let me know if the music's too loud. Chapter 1. I am forced into speech because men of science have refused to follow my advice without knowing why. It is altogether against my will that I tell my friends for opposing this contemplative. With its vast fossil hunt and wholesale boring and melting of the ancient ice caps, and I am the more reluctant because my warning may doubt of the real facts as I must reveal them is inevitable. Yet, if I suppress what will seem extravagant and incredible, there will be nothing left. The hitherto withheld photographs, both ordinary and aerial, will count in my favor, for they are damnably vivid and graphic. Still, they will be doubted because of the great lengths to which clever fakery can be carried. The ink drawings, of course, will be jeered at as obvious impostures, notwithstanding a strangeness of art, which art experts ought to remark and puzzle over. In the end, I must rely on the judgment and standing of the few scientific leaders who have, on the one hand, sufficient independence of thought to weigh against my data on their own hideously convincing merits or in the light of certain primordial and highly baffling cycles, and on the other hand, sufficient influence to deter the exploring world in general from any rash and over-ambitious program in the region of those mountains of madness. It is an unfortunate fact that relatively obscure men like myself and my associates, connected only with a small university, have little chance of making an impression where matters of a wildly bizarre or highly controversial nature are concerned. Name drop. Oh, they said it! They said it! It is further against us that we are not, in the strictest sense, specialists in fields which came primarily to be concerned. As a geologist, my object in leading the Miskatonic University expedition was wholly that of securing deep-level specimens of rock and soil from various parts of the entire continent. They said the thing! Aided by the remarkable drill devised by Professor Frank H. Peabody of our engineering department. I had no wish to be a pioneer in any other field than this, but I did hope that the use of this new mechanical appliance at different points along previously explored paths would bring to light materials of a sort hitherto unreached by the ordinary methods of collection. Bodie's drilling apparatus, as the public already knows from our reports, was unique and radical in its lightness, portability, and capacity to combine the ordinary artesian drill principle with the principle of the small circular rock drill in such a way as to cope quickly with strata of varying hardness. Steel head, jointed rods, gasoline motor, collapsible wooden derrick, dynamiting paraphernalia, boarding, rubbish removal auger, and sectional piping for bores 5 inches wide and up to 1,000 feet deep, all formed with needed accessories no greater load than 3 7-dog sledges could carry. This was made possible by the clever aluminium is it aluminum or aluminium alloy of which most of the metal objects were fashioned. Hello, Kiwi. 4 large Dornier aeroplanes designed especially for the tremendous altitude flying necessary on the Antarctic plateau, and with added fuel warming and quick starting devices worked out by Bodie could transport our entire expedition from a base at the edge of the Great Ice Barrier to various suitable inland points, and from these points a sufficient quota of dogs would serve us. Aluminum. I think aluminum is American? Oh, reading already. Jesus, no respect for those who arrive late anymore. I'm sorry, we just started. We just started. On the 6th paragraph, I think. We planned to cover as great an area as one Antarctic season, or longer if absolutely necessary, would permit, operating mostly in the mountain ranges and on the plateaus south of Ross Sea. Regions explored in varying degree by Shackleton, Amundsen, Scott and Bird, with frequent changes of camp made by aeroplane and involving distance, great enough to be of geological significance. We expected to unearth a quite unprecedented amount of material, especially in the pre-Cambrian strata, of which so narrow a range of Arctic specimens had previously been secured. We wish also to obtain as great as possible a variety of the upper fossiliferous rocks, since the primal life history, the bleak realm of ice and death, is of the highest importance to our knowledge of the Earth's past. That the Antarctic continent was once temperate and even tropical, with a teeming vegetable and animal life, of which the lichens, marine fauna, arachnida, and penguins of the northern edge are the only survivals, is a matter of common information, and we hope to expand that information in variety, accuracy, and detail. When a simple boring revealed fossiliferous signs, we would enlarge the aperture by blasting in order to get specimens of suitable size and condition. Fossiliferous. But yeah, that's why I usually start my streams with exercise, just so people have time to come in. There's a reason for it. Our borings of varying depths. Yet our borings of varying depth, according to the promise held out by the upper soil or rock, were to be confined to exposed, or nearly exposed, land surface. These inevitably being slopes and ridges because of the mile or 2 mile thick solid ice overlying the lower fields, the lower levels. We could not afford to waste drilling the depth of any considerable amount of mere glaciation, though Peabody had worked out a plan for copper electrodes in thick clusters of borings and melting off limited areas of ice with current from a gasoline-driven dynamo. It is this plan which we could not put into effect except experimentally on an expedition such as ours, that the coming Starkweather Moor expedition proposes to follow despite the warnings that have issued since the Arctic. They say the name of the book in the book itself is Cinema. I know. They said it! The public knows of the Miskatonic expedition through our frequent wireless reports to the Arkham Advertiser and Associated Press, and through the later articles of Peabody and myself. It consisted of 4 men from the University, Peabody, Lake of the Biology Department, Atwood of the Physics Department, also meteorologists, and myself representing geology and having nominal command. Besides 16 assistants, 7 graduate students from Miskatonic and 9 skilled mechanics. Of these 16, 12 were qualified airplane pilots, but all but two of whom were competent wireless operators. 8 of them understood navigation with compass and sextant, as did Peabody, Atwood, and I. In addition, of course, to our ships, wooden ex-whalers, and reinforced for ice conditions and having auxiliary steam fully manned. The Nathaniel Derby Pickman Foundation, aided by a few special contributions, financed the expedition. Hence, our preparations were extremely thorough, despite the absence of great publicity. The dogs, sledges, machines, camp materials, and unassembled parts of our 5 planes were delivered in Boston, and there our ships were loaded. We were marvelously well equipped for our specific purposes, and in all matters pertaining to supplies, regiment transportation, and camp construction, we profited by the excellent example of our many recent and exceptionally brilliant predecessors. Exceptionally brilliant predecessors. It was the unusual number and fame of these predecessors which made our own expedition ample, though it was so little noticed by the world at large. As the newspapers told, we sailed from Boston Harbor on September 2nd, 1930, taking a leisurely course down the coast and through the Panama Canal, and stopping at Samoa and Hobart, Tasmania, at which latter place we took on final supplies. None of our exploring party had ever been on the polar regions before, hence we all relied greatly on our ship's captains. J.B. Douglas commanding the brig Arkham and serving as commander of the sea party, and George Thorfinson commanding the bark Miskatonic, both veteran whalers in Antarctic waters. As we left the inhabited world behind, the sun sank lower and lower in the north and stayed longer and longer above the horizon each day. At about 62 degrees south latitude, we sighted our first icebergs, table-like objects with vertical sides, and just before reaching the Antarctic Circle, which we crossed on October 2nd, with appropriately quaint ceremonies, we were considerably troubled with field ice. The falling temperature bothered me considerably after our long voyage through the tropics, but I tried to brace up for the worst rigors to come. On many occasions the curious atmospheric effects enchanted me vastly, these including a strikingly vivid mirage, the first I had ever seen, in which distant bergs became the battlements of unimaginable cosmic castles. Pushing through the ice, which was fortunately neither extensive or thickly packed, we regained open water at south latitude 67 degrees, east longitude 175 degrees on the morning of October 26th. A strong land blink appeared on the south, and before noon we all felt a thrill of excitement at beholding a vast, lofty, and snow-clad mountain chain which opened out and covered the whole vista ahead. At last we had encountered an outpost of the great unknown continent and its cryptic world of frozen death. These peaks were obviously the Admiralty Range discovered by Ross, and it would now be our task to round Cape Adair and sail down the east coast of Victoria Land to our contemplated base on the shore of McMurdo South, at the foot of the volcano Erebus in south latitude 77 degrees 9. I don't know how to say those degrees things. The last lap of the voyage was vivid and fancy-stirring. Great barren peaks of mystery loomed up constantly against the west as the low northern sun of noon or the still lower horizon grazing southern sun of midnight poured its hazy reddish rays over the white snow, bluish ice, and water lanes, and black bits of exposed granite slope. Through the desolate summits swept ranging, intermittent gusts of the terrible Antarctic wind, whose cadences sometimes held vague suggestions of a wild and half-sentient musical piping, with notes extending over a wide range, and which for some subconscious mnemonic reason seemed to me disquieting and evenly dimly terrible. Something about the scene reminded me of the strange and disturbing Asian painting of Nicholas Roerich, and of the still stranger and more disturbing descriptions of the evilly fabled plateau of Leng, which occurred in the dreaded Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred. I was rather sorry later on that I had ever looked into that monstrous book at the college library. On the 7th of November, sight of the westward range having been temporarily lost, we passed Franklin Island, and the next day descried the cones of Mounts Erebus and Terror on Ross Island ahead, with a long line of the Parry Mountains beyond. The Necronomicon, yes. You guys have mentioned that to me before. There now stretched off to the east the low, white line of the Great Ice Barrier, rising perpendicularly to a height of 200 feet, like the rocky cliffs of Quebec, and marking the end of the southward navigation. In the afternoon we entered McMurdo Sound and stood off the coast in the lee of smoky Mount Erebus. The Skoriac Peak towered up some 12,700 feet against the eastern sky, like a Japanese print of the sacred Fujiyama, while beyond it rose the white, ghost-like height of Mount Terror, 10,900 feet in altitude and now as a volcano. I think it's south latitude 77 by 9, 9 being the longitude. Shorthand, I think. So I don't need to say the degree. Puffs of smoke from Erebus came intermittently, and one of the graduate assistants, a brilliant young fellow named Danforth, pointed out what looked like lava on the slope, remarking that this mountain, discovered in 1840, had undoubtedly been the source of Poe's image when he wrote 7 years later. Hello, Grammar Fisticuffs. The lavas that restlessly roll their sulphurous currents down Yanek, in the ultimate climbs of the pole that groan as they roll down Mount Yanek, in the realms of the boreal pole. Danforth was a great reader of bizarre material and had talked a good deal of Poe. I was interested myself because of the Antarctic scene of Poe's only long story, the disturbing, enigmatical Arthur Gordon on the barren shore, the lofty ice barrier in the background. Myriads of grotesque penguins squawked and flapped their fins, while many fat seals were visible in the water, swimming or sprawling across large cakes of slowly drifting ice. Using small boats, we effected a difficult landing on Ross Island shortly after midnight on the morning of the 9th, carrying a line of cable from each of the ships and preparing to unload supplies by means of breeches buoy arrangement. Our sensations on the first treading Antarctic soil were poignant and complex, even though at this particular point the Scott and Shackleton expedition had preceded us. Our camp on the frozen shore below the volcano slope was only a provisional one, headquarters being kept aboard the Arkham. We landed all our drilling apparatus, dogs, sledges, tents, provisions, gasoline tanks, experimental ice melting outfit, cameras, both ordinary and aerial, airplane parts, and other accessories, including 3 small portable wireless outfits besides those in the planes, capable of communicating with the Arkham's large outfit from any part of the Antarctic continent that we would be likely to visit. The ship's outfit, communicating with the outside world, was to convey press reports to the Arkham Advertiser's powerful wireless station on Kingsport Head, Massachusetts. We hoped to complete our work during a single Antarctic summer. But if this proved impossible, we would winter on the Arkham, sending the Miskatonic north before the freezing of the ice for another summer's supply. I want to visit the Antarctic as well. I want to go visit. Why? Just to see. Just a visit, you know? It's like how I wished I visited the Great Barrier Reef, but it's a bit late for me to visit now because everything's dead. Remember to bring sunglasses among all the winter gear. Snow blindness is a thing, yes. Hello, Scotty B Gaming. I need not repeat what the newspapers have already published about our early work, of our ascent of Mount Erebus, our successful minerals borings at several points on Ross Island, the singular speed with which Peabody's apparatus accomplished them, even through solid rock layers, our provisional test of the small ice melting equipment, our perilous ascent of the Great Barrier with sledges and supplies, and our final assembling of 5 huge aeroplanes at the camp atop the barrier. The health of our land party, 20 men and 55 Alaskan sledge dogs, was remarkable, though of course we had so far encountered no really destructive temperatures or windstorms. For the most part, the thermometer varied between 0 and 20 or 25 above, and our experience with New England winters had accustomed us to rigors of this sort. The barrier camp was semi-permanent and destined to be a storage cache for gasoline, provisions, and dynamite and other supplies. How am I doing? I'm sick, but I'm chillin'. How are you? Only 4 of our planes were needed to carry the actual exploring materials, the 5th being left with the pilot and 2 men from the ships at the storage cache to form a means of reaching us from the Arkham in case all our exploring planes were lost. Later, when not using all the other planes for moving apparatus, we would employ 1 or 2 in shuttle transportation service between this cache and another permanent base on the Great Plateau from 600 to 700 miles southward, beyond Beardmore Glacier. Despite the almost unanimous accounts of appalling winds and tempests that poured down from the plateau, we determined to dispense with intermediate basis chances, just so taking our chances in the interest of economy and probable efficiency. I see economics so much that I can't say economy properly anymore. Wireless reports have spoken of the breathtaking 4-hour non-stop flight of our squadron on November 21st over the lofty shelf ice, with vast peaks rising on the west and the unfathomed silences echoing to the south of our engines. Wind troubled us only moderately. Our radio compasses helped us through the one opaque fog we encountered. When the vast rise loomed ahead between latitudes 83 and 84, we knew that we had reached Beardmore Glacier, the largest valley glacier in the world, and that the frozen sea was now giving place to a frowning and mountainous coastline. At last, we were truly entering the white, aeon-dead world of the ultimate south. Even as we realized it, we saw the peak of Mount Nansen in the eastern distance, towering up to its height of almost 15,000 feet. The successful establishment of the southern base above the glacier in latitude 86/7, east longitude 174/23, and the phenomenally rapid and effective borings and blastings made at various points reached by our sledge trips and short aeroplane flights are matters of history, as is the arduous and triumphant ascent of Mount Nansen by Peabody and two of the graduate students, Gedney and Carroll, on December 13 to 15. We were some 8,500 feet above sea level, and when experimental drillings revealed solid ground only 12 feet down through the snow and ice at certain points, we made considerable use of the small melting apparatus and sunk bores and performed dynamiting at many places when the previous explorer had ever thought of securing mineral specimens. The Precambrian granites and Beacon sandstones thus obtained confirmed our belief that this plateau was homogeneous with the great bulk of the continent to the west, but somewhat different from the parts lying eastward below South America, which we then thought to form a separate and smaller continent divided from the larger one by a frozen junction of Ross and Weddell Seas, though Bird has since disproved the hypothesis. In certain of the sandstones, dynamited and chiseled after boring revealed their nature, we found some highly interesting fossil marks and fragments, notably ferns, seaweeds, trilobites, crinoids, and such mollusks as linguae and gastropods. Thanks for the follow, Scotty. All of which seemed of real significance in connection with the region's primordial history. There was also queer triangular striated marking about a foot in greatest diameter, which like pieced together from 3 fragments of slate brought up from a deep blasted aperture. These fragments came from a point to the westward, near the Queen Alexandra Range and Lake, as the biologists seemed to find their curious marking unusually puzzling and provocative. Though to my geological eye, it looked not unlike some of the triple effects reasonably common in sedimentary rocks. Since slate is no more than a metaphoric formation into which a sedimentary stratum is pressed, and since the pressure itself produces odd distorting effects on many markings which may exist, I saw no reason for extreme wonder over the striated depression. Goodness, but oh, the disguise worked. What happened? Sometimes some of the stuff don't work, so I'm surprised. Let me know if some of the redeems don't work as well. Let me just double check them. I forgot to check today. Hi, Rai. Yeah, the punish, that's what it does. That one. That one. That one. Because the disguise doesn't always work, I'm just gonna get rid of it. It worked? Okay. I'm gonna bring it back then. But yeah, Gemini, feel free to refund if you can if it doesn't work. In certain of the sands, we read that already, didn't we? Yeah, we did. On January 6, 1931, Lake Bodie, Danforth, and the other 6 students and myself flew directly over the South Pole in 2 of the Great Plains, being forced down once by sudden high wind, which fortunately did not develop into a typical storm. This was, as the papers have stated, one of several observation flights, during others of which we tried to topographical features in areas unreached by previous explorers. Our early flights were disappointing in this latter respect, though they afforded us some magnificent examples of the richly fantastic and deceptive mirages of the polar regions, of which our sea voyage had given us some brief foretastes. Distant mountains floated in the sky as enchanted cities, and often the whole white world would dissolve into gold, silver, and scarlet land of Dunsanian dreams and adventurous expectancy under the magic of the low midnight sun. On cloudy days we had considerable trouble in flying owing to the tendency of the earth and sky to merge into one mystical opalescent void with no visible horizon to the junction of the two. At length we resolved to carry out our original plan of flying 500 miles eastward with all 4 exploring planes and establishing a fresh subbase at a point which would probably be on the smaller continental division, as we mistakenly conceived it. Geological specimens obtained there would be desirable for purposes of comparison. Our health so far had remained excellent, lime juice well offsetting a steady diet of tinned and salted food, and temperatures generally above 0 enabling us to do without our thickest furs. It was now midsummer, with haste and care we might be able to conclude work by March and avoid a tedious wintering through the long Antarctic nights. Several savage windstorms had burst upon us from the west, but we had escaped damage through the skill of Atwood in devising rudimentary airplane shelter, windbreaks of heavy snow, and reinforcing the principal camp buildings with snow. Our good luck and efficiency had indeed been almost uncanny. Hello, Cozart. The outside world knew, of course, of our program, and was told also of Blake's strange and dogged insistence on a westward or rather northwestward prospecting trip before our radical shift to the new base. It seems that he had pondered a great deal and with alarmingly radical daring over that triangular striated marking in the slate reading into a certain contradiction in nature and geological period, which whetted his curiosity to the utmost and made him avid to sink more borings and blastings in the west stretching formation, to which the exhumed fragments evidently belonged. He was strangely convinced that the markings was a print of some bulking, unknown, and radically unclassified organism of considerably advanced evolution, notwithstanding that the rock which bore it was of so vastly ancient a date, Cambrian if not actually Precambrian, as to preclude the probable existence not only of all highly evolved life, but of any life at all above the unicellular or at most the trilobite stage. These fragments, with their odd marking, must have been 500 million to 1,000 million years old. Interesting. So I don't exactly understand what happened. So that was chapter 1. Basically the main character is going on an expedition to the Antarctic. They're drilling and doing other stuff. I don't really get it. Maybe I'll get it more in the other chapters. Hang on. Nothing has happened yet. It reminds me of the movie The Thing. What happened in The Thing? Chapter 2 looks like a long one. Back in this time frame, the Antarctic was very big unknown due to the temperatures and difficulty to get there. So that's the whole purpose of... Oh, okay. Science expedition like many others before it. Okay. I do wonder what the first men or that traveled to the Antarctic, what their reactions were to the animals there. The Thing, we have to watch it sometime. I'm gonna Google it. In the middle of a snowstorm, a team is trapped in a facility and an alien thing impersonates them to slowly kill them. Since it changes shape, there's always tension. What is this you're reading? At the Mountains of Madness. Lovecraft. OG Among Us. Oh. I'm looking at the Google Images. Ew. Ew. Super old. I saw her as a child. I must have forgotten some details. Oh. 1982. It's Australian. Wait, is it not Australian? No, it's not Australian. It was released in Australia 9 August 20. Let's do it. Chapter 2. Horror one. I don't mind watching horror. I just can't handle playing horror. We should do a watch. I don't know when. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Popular imagination, I judge, responded actively to our wireless bulletins of Lake Start northwestward into regions never trodden by human foot or penetrated by human imagination. Though we did not mention his wild hopes of revolutionizing the entire sciences of biology and geology. His preliminary sledging and boring journey of January 11th to 18th, with Peabody and 5 others marred by the loss of 2 dogs in an upset when crossing one of the great pressure ridges in the ice, had brought up more and more of the Archean slate, and even I was interested by the singular profusion of evident fossil markings in the unbelievably ancient stratum. These markings, however, were very primitive life forms, involving no great paradox except that any life forms should occur in rock as definitely Precambrian as this seemed to be. Hence, I still fail to see the good sense of Lake's demand for an interlude in our time-saving program, an interlude requiring the use of all 4 planes, many men, and the whole of the expedition's mechanical apparatus. I did not, in the end, veto the plan, though decided not to accompany the northwestward party, despite Lake's plea for my geological advice. While they were gone, I would remain at the base with Peabody and 5 men and work out final plans for the eastward shift. In preparation for this transfer, one of the planes had begun to move up in a good gasoline supply from McMurdo Sound, but this could wait temporarily. I kept with me 1 sledge and 9 dogs, since it was unwise to be at any time without possible transportation in an utterly tenantless world of aeon-long death. Getting off here was awesome meeting you. I'll start watching more often. Have a good night. Good night, chat. Good night. Yes, thanks for dropping by. Lake's sub-expedition into the unknown, as everyone will recall, sent out its own reports from the shortwave transmitters on the planes, these being simultaneously picked up by our apparatus at the southern base and by Arkham at McMurdo Sound, whence they were relayed to the outside world on wavelengths up to 50 meters. The start was made January 22nd at 4 a.m. and the first wireless message we received came only 2 hours later, when Lake spoke of descending and starting a small-scale ice melting before at a point some 300 miles away from us. 6 hours after that, a second and very exciting message told the frantic beaver-like work, whereby a shallow shaft had been sunk and blasted, culminating in the discovery of slate fragments with several markings approximately like the one which had caused the original puzzlement. 3 hours later, a brief bulletin announced the resumption of the flight in the teeth of a raw and piercing gale. And when I dispatched a message of the protest against further hazards, Blake replied curtly that his new specimen any hazard worth taking. I saw that his excitement had reached the point of mutiny, and that I could do nothing to check this headlong risk of the whole expedition's success. But it was appalling to think his plunging deeper and deeper into that treacherous and sinister white immensity of tempests and unfathomed mysteries which stretched off for some 1,500 miles to the half-unknown, half-suspected coastline of Queen Mary and Knox Lands. Then, in about an hour and a half more, came that doubly excited message from Lake's moving plane, which almost reversed my sentiments and made me wish I had accompanied the party. 10:05 p.m. on the wing, after snowstorm have spied mountain range ahead higher than any hitherto seen, may equal Himalayas, allowing for height of plateau. Probable latitude 76 by 15, longitude 113 by 10 east. Reaches far as can see to right and left. Suspicion of 2 smoking cones. All peaks black and bare of snow. Gale blowing off them impedes navigation. After that, Peabody, the man, and I hung breathlessly over the receiver. Thought of this titanic mountain rampart 700 miles away inflamed our deepest descents of adventure, and we rejoiced that our expedition, if not ourselves personally, had been its discoverers. In half an hour, Lake called us again. Moulton's plane forced down on plateau and foothills, but nobody hurt, and perhaps that can repair. I'll transfer essentials to other 3 for return or further moves if necessary, but no more heavy plane travel needed just now. Mountains surpass anything in imagination, and going up scouting in Carroll's plane with all weight out. You can't imagine anything like this. Highest peaks must go over 35,000 feet. Everest out of the running, Atwood to work at height with theodolite, and Carroll, while Carroll and I go up. Probably wrong about cones for formations look stratified. Possibly Precambrian slate with other strata mixed in. Weird skyline effects. Regular sections of cubes clinging to highest peaks. Whole thing marvelous in red gold light of low sun. Like land of mystery in a dream or gateway to forbidden world of untrodden wonder. Wish you were here to study. Though it was technically sleeping time, not one of us listeners thought for a moment of retiring. It must have been a good deal the same at McMurdo Sound, where the supply cache and the Arkham were also getting the messages, but Captain Douglas gave out a call congratulating everyone on the important find, and Sherman, the cache operator, seconded his sentiments. We were sorry, of course, about the damaged aeroplane, but hoped it could be easily mended. Then at 11 p.m. came another call from Lake. Up with Carroll over highest foothills. Don't dare try really tall peaks in present weather, but shall later. Frightful work climbing and hard going at this altitude, but worth it. Great range fairly solid, hence can't get any glimpses beyond. Maine's summits exceed Himalayas and very queer. Range looks like Precambrian slate with plain signs of many other upheaved strata. Was wrong about volcanism. Goes farther in either direction than we can see. Swept clear of snow above about 21,000 feet. Odd formations on slopes of highest mountains. Great low square blocks with exactly vertical sides and rectangular lines of low vertical ramparts like the old Asian castles clinging to steep mountains in Roerich paintings. Impressive from distance. Flew close to some, and Carroll thought they were formed of smaller separate pieces, but that is probably weathering. Most edges crumbled and rounded off as if exposed to storms and climate changes for millions of years. Parts, especially upper parts, seemed to be of lighter coloured rock than any visible strata on slopes proper, hence of evidently crystalline origin. Close flying shows many cave mounts, some unusually irregular in outline, square or semicircular. You must come and investigate. Think I saw ramparts squaring on top of one peak. Height seems about 30,000 to 35,000 feet, and up 21,500 myself, in devilish gnawing cold. Wind whistles and pipes through passes in and out of caves, but no flying danger so far. Book likes to use the word Precambrian. I wonder what that is. Precambrian. Informal unit of geologic time. Oh. I think okay. I didn't get it. From then on, for another half hour, Lake kept up a running fire of comment and expressed his intention of climbing some of the peaks on foot. I replied that I would join him as soon as he could send a plane, and that Peabody and I would work out the best gasoline plan, where and how to concentrate our supply in view of the expedition's altered character. Obviously, Lake's boring operations as well as his aeroplane activities would require a great deal for the new base, which he planned to establish at the foot of the mountains, and it was possible that the eastward flight might not be made after all this season. In connection with this business, I called Captain Douglas and asked him to get as much as possible out of the ship and up the barrier with a single dog team we had left there. Our direct route across the unknown region between Lake and McMurdo Sound was what we really ought to establish. The time of the planet where there were volcanoes everywhere, most of the diamonds in the planet were formed there. Oh, that's why they were talking about volcanoes. Oh. Am I cutting out randomly again? Blake called me later to say that he had decided to let the camp stay where Moulton's plane had been forced down, and where repairs had already progressed somewhat. The ice sheet was very thin, with dark around here, and there visible he would sink some borings and blasts at that very point before making any sledge trips or climbing expeditions. He spoke of the ineffable majesty of the whole scene and the queer state of his sensations at being in the lee of vast, silent pinnacles whose ranks shot up like a wall reaching the sky at the world's rim. Outward theodolite observations had placed the height of the 5 tallest peaks at from 30,000 to 34,000 feet. Only seldom mic cutouts, okay. The windswept nature of the terrain clearly disturbed Lake, but argued the occasional existence of prodigious scales, violent beyond anything we had so far encountered. His camp lay a little more than 5 miles from where the higher foothills rose abruptly. I could almost trace a note of subconscious alarm in his words, flashed across a glacial void of 700 miles as he urged that we all hasten with the matter and get the strange new region disposed of as soon as possible. He was about to rest now, after a continuous day of work, almost unparalleled speed, strenuous and results. In the morning, I had a 3-cornered wireless talk with Lake and Captain Douglas at their widely separated bases. It was agreed that one of Lake's planes would come to my base for Peabody, the 5 men and myself, as well as for all the fuel it could carry. The rest of the fuel question, depending on our decision about an easterly trip, could wait for a few days, since Lake had enough for immediate camp heat and borings. Eventually the old southern base ought to be restocked, but if we postpone the easterly trip, we will not use it till the next summer, and meanwhile Lake must send a plane to explore a direct route between his new mountains and McMurdo Sound. Peabody and I prepared to close our base for a short or long period, as the case might be. If we wintered in the Antarctic, we would probably fly straight from Lake's base to the Arkham without returning to this spot. Some of our conical tents had already been reinforced by blocks of hard snow, and now we decided to complete the job of making a permanent village. Owing to a very liberal tent supply, Lake had with him all that his base would need, even after our arrival. I wirelessed that Pabodi and I would be ready for the northwestward move after one day's work and one night's rest. Our labours, however, were not very steady after 4 p.m. For about that time, Lake began sending in the most extraordinary and exciting messages. His workday had started unpropitiously, since an aeroplane survey of the near-exposed rocks surfaces showed an entire absence of those Archean and primordial strata for which he was looking, and which formed so great a part of the colossal peaks that loomed up at a tantalizing distance from the camp. Most of the rocks glimpsed were apparently Jurassic and Comanchian sandstone and Permian and Triassic schists, with now and then a glossy black outcropping suggesting a hard and slaty coal. This rather discouraged Lake, whose plans all hinged on unearthing specimens more than 500 million years older. It was clear to him that in order to recover the Archean slate vein in which he had found the odd markings, he would have to make a long sledge trip from these foothills to the steep slopes of the gigantic mountains themselves. He had resolved, nevertheless, to do some local boring as part of the expedition's general program. Hence he set up the drill and put 5 men to work with it while the rest finished settling the camp and repairing the damaged airplane. The softest visible rock, a sandstone about a quarter of a mile from the camp, had been chosen for the first sampling, and the drill made excellent progress without much supplementary blasting. It was about 3 hours forward following the first really heavy blast from the operation that the shouting of the drill crew was heard, and that young Gedney, the acting foreman, rushed into the camp with the startling news. Ad break. I'm gonna blow my nose, hang on. Sniffle, sniffle. I wonder if there's a 7TV emote for sniffle. I'm gonna search it up. Sniffle. Sniffer. What about sniffle? The sniffy. Nope, no sniffle. No sniffle. No, there's sniffer. There's sniffer, but no sniffle. had struck a cave. Early in the boring, the sandstones had given place to a vein of Comanchian limestone, of minute fossil cephalopods, coral, echini, and spirifera, and with occasional suggestions of siliceous sponges and marine vertebrate bones, the latter probably of teleosk, sharks and ganoids. This in itself was important enough as affording the first vertebrate fossils the expeditions had yet secured, but when shortly afterward the drill had stopped through the stratum into apparent vacancy, a wholly new and doubly intense wave of excitement spread among the excavators. A good-sized blast had laid open the subterranean secret, and now, through a jagged aperture perhaps 5 feet across and 3 feet thick, there yawned before the avid searchers a section of shallow limestone hollowing worn more than 50 million years ago by the trickling groundwaters of a bygone tropic world. The hollowed layer was not more than 7 or 8 feet deep, but extended off indefinitely in all directions, and had a fresh, slightly moving air, which suggested its membership in an extensive subterranean system. Its roof and floor were abundantly equipped with large stalactites and stalagmites, some of which met a columnar form. But important above all else was the vast deposit of shells and bones, which in place nearly choked the passage, washed down from unknown jungles of the Mesozoic tree ferns and fungi, and forests of tertiary cycads, fan palms, and primitive angiosperms. This osseous medley contained representatives of more Cretaceous Eocene, and other animal species than the greatest paleontologists could have counted or classified in a year. What's interesting? What's bad? Osseous, Cretaceous, Eocene? Mollusks, crustacean armor, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and early mammals, great and small, known and unknown. No wonder Gedney ran back to the camp shouting, and no wonder everyone else dropped work and rushed headlong through the biting cold to where the tall derrick marked a newfound gateway to secrets of inner earth and vanished eons. When Lake had satisfied the first keen edge of his curiosity, he scribbled a message in his notebook and had young Moulton run back to the camp to dispatch it by wireless. This was my first word of the discovery, and it told of the identification of early shells, bones of ganoids and placoderms, remnants of labyrinthodonts and thecodonts, great mosasaur skull fragments, dinosaur vertebrae and armor plates, pterodactyl teeth and wing bones, Archaeopteryx debris, Miocene shark teeth, primitive bird skulls, and other bones of archaic mammals such as Paleotheres, Cephalodons, Eohippie, Oreodons, and Titanotheres. There was nothing as recent as mastodon, elephant, true camel, deer, or bovine animal. Hence, Lake concluded that the last deposit had occurred during the Oligocene age, and that the hollowed stratum had lain in its present dried, dead, and inaccessible state for at least 30 million years. Believe me, when I was a young man around the Precambrian era, I had to look up a dictionary for some of these. Yes! It's so hard! I don't know much about dinosaurs and prehistoric stuff. On the other hand, The prevalence of very early life forms was singular in the highest degree, though the limestone formation was on the evidence of such typical embedded fossils as ventriculites. Positively, oh wait, my mom called me, hang on. Hello again. What was it up to? Let's start again. Okay, on the other hand, the prevalence of very early life forms was singular in the highest degree. Though the limestone formation was on the evidence of such typical embedded fossils and as ventriculites, positively and unmistakably Comanchian and not a particle earlier. The free fragments on the hollow space included a surprising proportion from organisms hitherto considered as peculiar to far older periods. Even rudimentary fishes, mollusks, and corals as remote as the Silurian or Ordovician. The inevitable inference was that in this part of the world, there had been a remarkable and unique degree of continuity between the life of over 300 million years ago and that of only 30 million years ago. How far this continuity had extended beyond the Oligocene age, where the cavern was closed, was of course past all speculation. In any event, the coming of the frightful ice in the Pleistocene some 500,000 years ago. A mere yesterday, as compared with the age of this cavity, must have put an end to any of the primal forms which had locally managed to outlive their common terms. Silurian. I know the Silurian from Doctor Who. Blake was not content to let his first message stand, but had another bulletin written and dispatched across the snow to the camp before Moulton could get back. After that, Moulton stayed at the wireless in one of the planes, transmitting to me and to the Arkham for relaying to the outside world the frequent postscripts which Blake sent him by a succession of messengers. Those who follow the newspaper will remember the excitement created among men of science by that afternoon's reports which have finally led, after all these years, to the organization of that very Starkweather Moor expedition, which I am so anxious to dissuade from its purposes. I had better give the messages literally as Lake sent them, and as our base operator, I translated them from the pencil shorthand. Oh, it's a long message. Fowler makes discovery of highest importance in sandstone and limestone fragments from blasts. Several distinct triangular striates prints from like those in Archean slates, proving that source survived from over 600 million years ago to Comanchian times without more than moderate morphological changes and decrease in average size. Comanchian prints, apparently more primitive or decadent, if anything, than older ones, emphasize importance of discovery impress, will mean to biology what Einstein has meant to mathematics and physics. joins up with my previous work and amplifies conclusions. Appears to indicate, as I suspected, that Earth has seen whole cycles of organic life before known one that begins with archaeozoic cells, was evolved with specialized not later than 1,000 million years ago, when planet was young and recently uninhabitable for any life forms or normal protoplasmic structures. Question arises when, where, and how development took place. Later, examining certain skeletal fragments of large land and marine saurians and primitive mammals, find singular local wounds or injuries to bony structure, not attributable to any known predatory or carnivore animal period, of two sorts: straight, penetrant bores and apparently hacking incisions. 1 or 2 cases of cleanly severed bones. Not many specimens affected. Am sending to camp for electrical torches. Will extend search area underground by hacking away stalactites. Still later, I found peculiar soapstone fragments about 6 inches across and 1.5 inches thick, wholly unlike any visible local formation. Greenish, but no evidences to place its period. Has curious smoothness and regularity, shaped like 5-point star with tips broken off and signs of other cleavage at inward angles and in center of surface. Small, smooth depression in center of unbroken surface. Arouses much curiosity as to source and weathering. Probably some freak of water action. Carroll, with magnifier, thinks he can make out additional markings of geological significance. Groups of tiny dots in regular patterns. Dogs growing uneasily as we work, and seem to hate this soapstone. Must see if it has any peculiar odor. We'll report again when Mills gets back with light and we start on underground area. 10:15 p.m. Important discovery. Orendorff and Watkins, working underground at 9:45 with light, found monstrous barrel-shaped fossil of wholly unknown nature. Probably vegetable, unless overgrown specimen of unknown marine radiator. Tissue evidently preserved by mineral salts, tough as leather, but astonishing flexibility retained in places. Marks of broken off parts at ends and around sides. 6 feet end to end, 3 and 5/10 feet central diameter, tapering to 1 foot at each end, like a barrel, with 5 bulging ridges in place of staves. Lateral breakages, as of thinner stalks, are at equator in middle of these ridges. In furrows between ridges are curious growths, combs or wings that fold up and spread out like fans. All great damage but one, which gives almost 7-foot wingspread. Arrangement reminds one of certain monsters of primal myth, especially fabled elder things in Necronomicon. Their wings seem to be membranous, stretched on framework of glandular tubing. Apparent minute orifices and frame tubing at wingtips. Ends of body shriveled, giving no clue to interior or to what has been broken off there. Must dissect when we get back to camp. Can't decide whether vegetable or animal. Many features obviously of almost incredible primitiveness. Have set all hands cutting stalactites. Have set all hands cutting stalactites and looking for further specimens. Additional scarred bones found, but these must wait. Having trouble with dogs. They can't enjoy the new specimen. We would probably tear it to pieces if we didn't keep it at a distance from them. 11:30 p.m. Attention. Dyer, Peabody, Douglas. Matter of highest, I must say, transcendent importance. Arkham must relay to Kingsford Head Station at once. Strange barrel growth is Archaean thing that left prints in rocks. Mills, Baudru and Fowler discovered cluster of 13 more cluster of 13 more at underground point 40 feet from aperture, mixed with curiously rounded and configured soapstone fragments smaller than one previously found, star-shaped, but no marks of breakage except at some of the points. Of organic specimen, 8 apparently perfect with all appendages have brought all to surface, leading off dogs to a distance. They cannot stand the things, give close attention to description, and repeat back for accuracy. Papers must get this right. Objects are 8 stalactites and stalagmites. Stalactites. Objects are 8 feet long all over. 6 foot 5 ridge barrel, torso 3 5/10 feet central diameter, 1 foot end diameters. Dark grey, flexible and infinitely tough. 7 foot membranous wings of same color, found folded, spread out of furrows between ridges. Wing frameworks tubular or glandular of lighter grey, with orifices at wingtips. Spread wings have serrated edge. Around equator, one at central apex of each of the 5 vertical stave-like ridges are 5 systems of light grey, flexible arms or tentacles, found tightly folded to torso, but expansible to maximum length of over 3 feet. Like arms of primitive crinoid, single stalks 3 inches diameter branch after 6 inches into 5 substalks, each of which branches after 8 inches into small tapering tentacles or tendrils, giving each stalk a total of 25 tentacles. Is this another Cthulhu reference? At top of torso blunt, bulbous neck of lighter grey, with gill-like suggestion of yellowish 5-point starfish shaped, apparent head covered with 3-inch wiry cilia of various prismatic colours. Head thick and puffy, about 2 feet, point to point, with 3-inch flexible yellowish tubes projecting from each point. Slit at exact centre of top, probably breathing aperture. At end of each tube is spherical expansion where yellowish membrane rolls back on handling to reveal glassy red irised globe, evidently an eye. 5 slightly longer reddish tubes start from inner angles of starfish-shaped head and end in sac-like swellings of same colour which, upon pressure, open to bell-shaped orifices, 2 inches maximum diameter and lined with sharp, white tooth-like projections, probably mouths. All these tubes, cilia, and points of starfish head, found folded tightly down, tubes and points clinging to bulbous neck and torso. Flexibility surprising despite vast toughness. At bottom of torso, rough but dissimilarly functioning counterparts of head arrangements exist. Bulbous, light grey pseudo neck without gill suggestions holds greenish 5-point starfish arrangement. Everything is, oh damn. Tough, muscular arms 4 feet long and tapering from 7 inches diameter at base to about 2 5/10 at point. To each point is attached small end of a greenish 5-vein membranous triangle 8 inches long and 6 wide at farther end. This is the paddle, fin or pseudofoot, which has made prints in rocks from 1,000 million to 50 or 60 million years old. Not a reference to Cthulhu himself, there is art of these things, so Oh, the art that's in the book cover on the screen. Where am I up to? From inner angles of starfish arrangement project two forge-reddish tubes tapering from 3 inches diameter at base to 1 at tip. Orifices at tips. All of these parts infinitely tough and leathery, extremely flexible. 4-foot arms with paddles, undoubtedly used for locomotion of some sort, marine or otherwise. When moved, display a suggestion of exaggerated muscularity. As found, all these projections tightly folded over pseudoneck and end of torso, corresponding to projections at other end. Cannot yet assign positively to animal or vegetable kingdom, but odds now favor animal. Probably represents incredibly advanced evolution of radiator without loss of certain primitive features. Echinoderm resemblances unmistakable despite local contradictory evidences. Wing structure puzzles in view of probable marine habitat, but may have use of water navigation. Symmetry is curiously vegetable-like. Suggestion vegetables essential up and down structure rather than animals fore and aft structure. Fabulously early date of evolution, preceding even simplest Archaean protozoa hitherto known, baffles all conjecture as to origin. Complete specimens have such uncanny resemblance to certain creatures of primal myth that suggestion of ancient existence outside Antarctic becomes inevitable. Dye and Peabody have read Necronomicon and seen Clark Ashton Smith's nightmare paintings based on text, and will understand when I speak of elder things supposed to have created all Earth life as jest or mistake. Students have always thought conceptions formed from morbid imaginative treatment of very ancient tropical radiator, also like prehistoric folklore things Woolmarth has spoken of, Cthulhu cult appendages, etc. Vast field of study opened. Deposits probably of late Cretaceous or early Eocene period, judging from associated specimens. Massive stalagmites deposited above them. Hard work hewing out, but toughness prevented damage. State of preservation miraculous, evidently owing to limestone action. No more found so far, but will resume search later. Hello, Taco. Job now to get 14 huge specimens to climb without dogs, which bark furiously and can't be trusted near them. With 9 men, 3 left to guard the dogs, we ought to manage the 3 sledges fairly well. Though wind is bad, must establish plain communication with McMurdo Sound and begin shipping material. But I've got to dissect one of these things before we take any rest. Wish I had a real laboratory here. Dyer better kick himself for having tried to stop my westward trip. Hello, Happy Cow. Now it said that C should be the later for sleeping. What does that mean? What do you mean? I don't know what you mean. Oh. First the world's greatest mountains and then this. If this isn't the highest spot of the expedition, I don't know what is. We're made scientifically. Congrats, Peabody, on the drill that opened up the cave. Now will Arkham please repeat description? How goes the story? I'm very confused. Story does confuse me. And I'm also a bit sick, so the reading is a little bit hard. It's okay. I often have felt that way reading Lovecraft. Like things slowly makes sense. But the thing with old literature is that they're so descriptive. And because of all the descriptions, the message easily gets lost. The sensations of Peabody and myself at receipt of this report were almost beyond description, nor were our companions much behind us in enthusiasm. McTighe, who had hastily translated a few high spots as they came from the droning receiving set, wrote out the entire message from his shorthand version as soon as Lake's operator signed off. All appreciated the epoch-making significance of the discovery, and I sent Lake congratulations as soon as Arkham's operator had repeated back the descriptive parts as requested. And my example was followed by Sherman from his station at the McMurdo Sound supply cache, as well by the Captain Douglas of the Arkham. Later, as head of the expedition, I added some remarks to be relayed through the Arkham to the outside world. Of course, rest was an absurd thought amidst this excitement, and my only wish was to get to Lake's camp as quickly as I could. It disappointed me when he sent word that a rising mountain gale made early aerial travel impossible. But within an hour and a half, interest gained rose to banish disappointment. Lake sending more messages told of the completely successful transportation of 14 great specimens to the camp. It had been a hard pull, for the things were surprisingly heavy, but 9 men had accomplished it very neatly. Now some of the party were hurriedly building a snow corral at a safe distance from the camp, which the dogs could be brought for greater convenience in feeding. The specimens were laid out on the hard snow near the camp, save for one on which Lake was making crude attempts at dissection. These things they found are previous to life on Earth, and they are complete. Nobody suspects anything. It will end well. Yeah, it will end very well. The human curiosity is what's gonna end them. Hello, Zayumi. Hello, how are you? This dissection seemed to be a greater task than had been expected, for despite the heat of a gasoline stove in the newly raised laboratory tent. Oh my goodness.
Rest in peace.
This deceptively flexible tissue of the chosen specimen, a powerful and intact one, lost nothing of their more than leathery toughness. Lake was puzzled as to how he might take the request. Blake was puzzled as to how he might make the request. Blake was puzzled as to how he might make the requisite incisions without violence destructive enough to upset all the structural niceties he was looking for. He had, it is true, 7 more perfect specimens, but these were too few to use up recklessly unless a cave might later yield an unlimited supply. Accordingly, he removed the specimen and dragged in one which, though having remnants of the starfish arrangements at both ends, was badly crushed and partially disrupted along one of the great torso furrows. Oh, the flower hop's cute. Usually it's just a static one. Yes, I will hydrate. I need to go bathroom, hang on. Hello again. Results quickly reported over the wireless were baffling and provocative indeed. Nothing like delicacy or accuracy was possible with instruments hardly able to cut the anomalous tissue. But the little that was achieved left us all awed and bewildered. Existing biology would have to be wholly revised, for this thing was no product of any cell growth science knows about. There had been scarcely any mineral replacement, and despite an age of perhaps 40 million years, the internal organs were wholly intact. The leathery, undeteriorative, and almost indestructible quality was an inherent attribute of the thing's form of organization, and pertained to some Paleogen cycle of invertebrate evolution utterly beyond our powers of speculation. At first, all that lake found was dry, but as the heat attend produces thawing effects, organic moisture of pungent and offensive odor was encountered towards the thing's injured side. It was not blood, but a thick, dark green fluid apparently answered the same purpose. By the time Blake reached this stage, all 37 dogs had been brought to the still uncompleted corral near the camp, and even at that distance set up a savage barking and show of restlessness at the acrid, diffusive smell. It's getting stinky! It's getting stinky! Far from helping to place a strange entity, this provisional dissection merely deepened its mystery. All guesses about its external members had been correct, and on the evidence of these ones could hardly hesitate for the thing animal. But internal inspection brought up so many vegetable evidences that Lake was left hopelessly at sea. It had digestion and circulation, and eliminated waste matter through the reddish tubes of its starfish-shaped base. Cursorily, one would say that its respiration apparatus handled oxygen rather than carbon dioxide, and there were odd evidences of air storage chambers and methods of shifting respiration from the external orifice to at least 2 other fully developed breathing systems, gills and pores. Clearly it was amphibian and probably adapted to long airless hibernation periods as well. Vocal organs seemed present in connection with the main respiratory system, but they presented anomalies beyond immediate solution. Articulate speech in the sense of our syllable utterances seemed barely conceivable, but musical piping covering a wide range were highly probable. The muscular system was almost prematurely developed. The nervous system was so complex and highly developed as to leave Lake aghast. Though excessively primitive and archaic in some respects, the thing had a set of ganglial centers and connective arguing the very extremes of specialized development. Its 5-lobe brain was surprisingly advanced, and there were signs of sensory equipment served in part through the wiry cilia of the head, involving factors alien to any other terrestrial organism. Probably it has more than 5 senses, so that its habits could not be predicted from any existing analogy. From any existing analogy. It must, like thought, have been a creature of keen sensitiveness and delicately differentiated functions in its primal world, much like the ants and bees of today. It reproduced like the vegetable cryptogams, especially the pteridophyta, having spore cases at the tips of the wings and evidently developing from a thallus or prothallus. Thanks for the follow, Ace Garcia. But to give it a name at this stage was mere folly. It looked like a radiate, but was clearly something more. It was partially vegetable, but had 3/4 of the essentials of animal structure. That it was marine in origin, its symmetrical contour, and certain other attributes clearly indicate, yet one could not be exact as to the limit of its later adaptation. The wings, after all, held a persistent suggestion of the aerial. How it could have undergone its tremendous complex evolution on a newborn Earth in time to leave prints in Archean rocks was so far beyond conception as to make Lake whimsically recall the primal myths about great old ones who filtered down from the stars and concocted Earth life as a joke or mistake, and the wild tales of cosmic hill things from outside told by a folklorist colleague in Miskatonic's English department. Naturally, he considered the possibility of the Precambrian prints having been made by a less evolved ancestor of the present specimens. Quickly rejected this two-facile theory upon considering the advanced structural qualities of the older fossils. If anything, the later contours showed decadence rather than higher evolution. The size of the pseudofeet had decreased. The whole morphology seemed coarsened and simplified. Moreover, the nerves and organs just examined held singular suggestions of retrogression from forms still more complex. Atrophied and vestigial parts were surprisingly prevalent. Altogether, little could be said to have been solved, and Lake fell back on mythology for a provisional name, jocosely dubbing his finds the older ones. Those things are gonna wake up. I know, you know it. The dogs know it. Yeah, we all know it. Dogs could smell it. At about 2:30 a.m., having decided to postpone further work and get a little rest, he covered the dissected organism with a tarpaulin, emerged from the laboratory tent, and studied the intact specimens with renewed interest. The ceaseless Antarctic sun had begun to limber up the tissues a trifle, so that the head points and tubes of 2 or 3 showed signs of unfolding. But Lake did not believe there was any danger of immediate decomposition in the almost sub-zero air. He did, however, move all the undissected specimens close together and throw a spare tent over them in order to keep off the solar rays. That would also help to keep the possible scent away from the dogs, whose hostile unrest was really becoming a problem, even at their substantial distance and behind the higher and higher snow walls, which an increased quota of the men were hastening to rise around their quarters. He had to weight down the corners of the tent cloth with heavy blocks of snow to hold it in place amidst the rising gale, for the Titan mountains seemed about to deliver some gravely severe blasts. Early apprehensions about sudden Antarctic winds were revived, and under outward supervision, precautions were taken to bank the tents, new dog corral, and crude aeroplane shelters with snow in the mountainward side. These latter shelters, begun with hard snow blocks during odd moments, were by no means as high as they could have been, and Lake finally detached all hands from other tasks to work on them. It was after 4 when Lake at last prepared to sign off and advised us to share the rest period. His outfit would take when the shelter walls were a little higher. He held some friendly chat with Peabody over the ether, and repeated his praise of the really marvelous drills that had helped him make his discovery. Atwood also sent greetings and praises. I gave Lake a warm word of congratulations, owning up that he was right about the Western trip, and we all agreed to get in touch by wireless at 10 in the morning. If the gale was then over, Lake would send a plane for the party at my base. Just before retiring, I dispatched a final message to the Arkham with instructions about toning down the day's news for the outside world, since the full details seemed radical enough to rouse a wave of incredulity until further substantiated. That was chapter 2. I actually just planned to read chapter 1 and 2 today because of my throat. Because I feel like if I were to read chapter 3, it will go for way too long. I should slow down when I'm reading, huh? Especially with me struggling with some of the words as well. Ooh, I have a question. You guys know about the new customizable model by Suica? Second one seems sure it got quite long. Yeah, it was a lot of the message, the description message. I'm considering getting the Suica model. I don't know if I should. I'm still thinking about it. I don't know. You want to try customize? They're pretty. Yeah. The one by Suica is very customizable. It is paid, so that's why I'm still thinking about it. Because I do want to use get Luro to get my to do my second model as well. So I'm just wondering if it's worth it or not. I do want to spend some time as a PNG when I switch to the second design as well. So that's why I'm just really thinking about it. Because I know I was thinking of using the chibi model that I showed you guys a while ago. But I'm just not too comfortable using chibi models sometimes because I don't want people to treat me a bit differently. You know, because I know some people, if they're new and they come in, they will treat this model or whoever's behind this model a little bit differently to someone who's behind a chibi model or someone whose model design is a little bit less mature looking. Changes are fun. Yeah. But it's just, maybe I should. Maybe I should. But I do also want to spend some time as a PNG as well. Maybe later. Well, that was fast. What now? I'm just gonna look for now. Who I can raid. I want to make more Australian friends. I'll be honest. I do want to make more Australian friends. I do want to talk to more Australian people. All the things art. Oh, okay. Lovecraft. All the things. Whoa. Ew. Have you guys seen it? Pretty nice drawings though. Very nice drawings. That's cool. That's a starfish looking shape. Oh, that looks fun. It wasn't what I imagined. That looks, well, fun. Yeah. It was similar to a drum with teeth. The descriptions are very descriptive. I think, yeah, that's a good thing with it being so descriptive. It's easy for the artists to draw, but it's so hard for the non-artists to follow along. Barrel mimic? You need your car, okay. Mimics in D&D can be almost anything, but use your chest on mundane items. Ow. It's been a while since we oh. It's been a while since we explored Fields of Mystria, so we might as well raid into Fields of Mystria as well. Maybe we should get back to Fields of Mystria one day, yeah? I don't know when. But we might as well get back into it as well. Okay, say bye to YouTube people. Bye YouTube. I forgot to end stream last time. Oops.